We have seen earlier that when we convert the sequencing by hybridization into a Hamiltonian path problem, it does not lead to any good algorithm that can solve this problem. But fortunately, on the other hand, when we convert the sequencing by hybridization to a Eulerian path problem, it leads to a very simple linear time algorithm, which can be used to solve the problem of sequence rearrangement. So when we convert this sequencing by hybridization into a Eulerian path problem, the target is to construct a graph in which the edges rather than vertices, they are correspond to the Elmers, that is derived from the spectrum SL. And then the target is to find a path in which each edge is visited only once. So in this graph we obtained a graph G in which the built is on the set of all L minus 1 mers rather than, as we have studied previously, is built on the L mers. So in this diagram we will see that an L minus 1 mer, as we have discussed earlier, that is, we consider it as a V, is joined by the directed edge with another L minus 1 mer that we consider as W. If the spectrum contains an L mer for which the first L minus 1 nucleotide coincide with the V and the last L minus 1 nucleotide coincide with the W. So we can see here that this is the starting point and this is denoted as AT, and we can see here the last nucleotide of AT is T, and it is the first edge and the weight of the edge is TG, and we can see the first nucleotide of TG is T. So it is overlapping with the first AT. Similarly, we can see then in the second edge the first nucleotide is G, and we can see the last nucleotide of previous one is also G. So this G will overlap with this G, and this will continue until we get to the last CA. So in this way we will get the two different types of superstrings, and these superstrings, they will be different from each other because we can see the path of in the Eulerian graph is different in both of these two superstrings. So it means that this approach is much better than the Hamiltonian path problem, and in this we can get the rearrangement of the sequences. So if we consider each Elmer from the spectrum corresponds to the directed edge in G rather than to a vertex as it does in H. As we can compare the two diagrams, earlier we have seen that in the Hamiltonian graph, this is the H graph and this is the G graph, and we can compare these two graphs. In H graph we consider the Elmers corresponding to the vertices, but in the G graph we compare the Elmers in this L minus 1 mers as corresponding to the edges rather than vertices. So after this, the problem of finding an Eulerian path is much better than the Hamiltonian path problem. Superficially, if we see, finding an Eulerian path looks just as hard as finding the Hamiltonian path, but as we can see that this path, Eulerian path, turns out to be simple. If we consider the Eulerian cycle, that is the Eulerian path in which the first and the last vertices are the same, because we know that when in the Eulerian path we have to end up to that edge from where we have started. So the end point and the first point is the same in the Eulerian path problem. A directed graph G is Eulerian if it combines or contains an Eulerian cycle, and vertex V in the path graph is balanced if the number of edges entering V equals the number of edges leaving V. That is, if in degree V is equal to the out degree V. So for any given vertex V in an Eulerian graph, the number of times the Eulerian cycle enters V is exactly the same as the number of times it leaves. So thus the in degree V is equal to out degree V for every vertex V in this Eulerian path.